And it might be great changes, but just going through it sometimes is not the easiest thing in the world. In 1886, Carl Benz drove his first automobile through the streets of Munich, Germany. He named his car Mercedes-Benz after his daughter, Mercedes. The machine angered the citizens because it was noisy and scared the children and horses. Pressured by the citizens, the local officials immediately established a speed limit for horseless carriages, i.e. focusing on these cars, of about 3.5 miles an hour in the city limits and 7 miles an hour outside. Benz knew he could never develop a market for his car and compete against horses if he had to creep along at those speeds. So he invited the mayor of the town for a ride. The mayor accepted. Benz then arranged for a milkman to park his horse and wagon on a certain street, and as Benz and the mayor drove by, to whip up his old horse and pass them, and as he did so, to give the German equivalent of the Bronx cheer. The plan worked. The mayor was furious and demanded that Benz overtake the milk wagon. Benz apologized, but said because of the ridiculous speed law, he was not permitted to go any faster. Very soon after that, the law was changed. Now, in this case, it's a positive change, right? They're going from horse-drawn buggy to a car. And it's a good change. I mean, is it not? And yet, going from one thing that you're used to, i.e. a city full of horse-drawn carriages, and changing to this machine thing that you've never seen before, that's completely new, that you've never experienced before, even though it's a good thing, sometimes it's just hard for people to go through. It's just going through adjustments. It's almost like it doesn't matter what it is. It's like we're so used to having things kind of the status quo that when things kind of ripple it, we kind of like resist against it. It's kind of like the first law of motion. The one where a thing that's in motion stays in motion. A thing that's at rest stays at rest. It's almost like once you kind of get going at a certain pace of life or a certain way of doing things, to have something come and disrupt it is not always that easy. Now I asked, for example, this is not just for any one particular group, but for anyone. For example, I asked some of the older, some of the sophomores, juniors, seniors, and not all of them, but even for some of them, going through changes, even each year, sometimes is a difficult adjustment. Even after you've been at school for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes, just even that change of year, even that, going from one old roommate, leaving them behind, going to the next one, it's just, sometimes it's not that easy, It's like, okay, it's something that you got to go through, but sometimes it's kind of hard to do it. For example, our church. Our church is one of those churches where it's stable, okay? Doesn't like to change, okay? When you got a small ripple, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, children's playground, we never done it before. You go on and on. You get a big change, and dude, all of a sudden you get like a huge ripple. Why? It's not necessarily that the change is bad. It's that sometimes it's hard for people to go through changes. And even at our church, maybe the changes in the pastoral staff, even thinking about it being changed, it's kind of a hard thought to think about. And yet, sometimes it's not necessarily a bad change, but it can be hard to go through. Not all adjustments in life are necessarily bad. Going to college, starting to work, going from single life to married life, going from married life to having children. All these things are different changes in life, and they're good changes. But sometimes they ain't all that easy to go through. I talk to a lot of young adults. When they go from college and they start working, they're actually earning money. They're earning good money. They've gone there 4 years. They've got their degree. Now they've got real jobs, and they can actually buy stuff. Not just the little peanuts that you can buy from a minimum wage job. They got real salaries, and yet for some of them, it's the hardest time of their life. Sometimes they get really depressed. Because they come home, there's nobody around, and they're living on their own. And so, even though the changes aren't necessarily bad, again, sometimes it's just kind of hard to adjust to it. Now, I took a poll of some of the experienced college students since I've been out for a while, and here they said that these are some of the top adjustments that they had to make. Some of them, stayed local. Some of them went far, but I just kind of took a random sample. Okay, first one is some people say that their most difficult thing was having academic adjustments. Going from a class size of 30 to 300, and all of a sudden you got this workload that's quite a bit greater than what they had before. And for them, that was the biggest change. I was like, oh man, it's not something I'm used to. It doesn't feel quite right. Other people, they say that the biggest adjustment is just like friends. It's like, now you're at school and, oh man, who am I going to eat with? Like, I got to find somebody for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh man. And sometimes it's just, you got to make all these new friends. And sometimes that's kind of hard. For other people, their biggest adjustment is now they actually got to share a room, actually live with somebody. Now granted, some people are a little bit easier to live with than others, but I would say in a room of freshmen, I would say maybe a third to a half are going to have some struggles with their roommate. Trying to learn to live together, actually learn to if your roommate comes in and is wearing your clothes, to know how to kind of deal with it in a normal manner. For other people, their biggest adjustment is just the way I'll title it is like this new freedom adjustment. All of a sudden, there's the uncontrolled video gaming, or the not feeling like going to class, or the not staying on top of even your own spiritual life. Basically it's like, I call it the wild life syndrome, that kind of thing. All of a sudden your grades start tanking and, all this other stuff happens, okay? Overall, what they told me was the biggest change or the hardest thing is just a completely new life, or a completely new environment. And if you live somewhere else, it's like, when you're there, it's like, wow, it just doesn't feel the same as it used to be. And not only that, but if I don't live at home, it's like, it just doesn't feel like home.